Hello, amateurs. Welcome to another episode of the Amateur Rugby Podcast, here to help soothe your Sunday morning hangover with some wonderful rugby chat about the grassroots of the game. I'm your host, Tim, and I've got another fantastic guest for you today. This man has just spent 4 years being director of rugby at a level 5 rugby club, and he's put what he's learned down into ink on a blog post titled Diary of a DOR. And I love to encourage this kind of sharing culture within rugby, so I just had to get him on the pod. Please welcome Mr. Chris Swann. Chris, how are you, sir?
Yeah, I'm good. I've just never heard anyone be so positive. It's great.
Well, that's what this podcast is all about. So we will kick off with how did you find yourself at CS Stags, which is the club that I referenced in the intro?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because CS Stags has been going since 1863. So it's blinking old. I think it's it must be one of the first clubs. And it used to be part of a civil service, and I'm sure there are some domestic disputes somewhere, and now it is what it is. So it doesn't really have a home for anyone anymore because it hasn't got a youth section, hasn't got a junior section. It's just ambled along by the way of the passion of a bunch of guys who played there 40, 50 years ago, still wanting to see the club do well. So I was coaching at Surrey Ladies a few years ago with a mate of mine, and he just happened to mention one Saturday morning that he's a forwards coach at CS Stags. We're playing Wimbledon at home. Why don't you just come down and just, I don't know, have fun? It's nice and sunshine. I thought, Brill, there's a Virgin active next door. I'll go to Virgin, sit in the pool for a bit and then head over. Watched them get smashed, which was maybe a sign of things to come, and it was good to catch up with George. And then I was chatting to some bloke on the sideline who turned out to be the chairman. I was like, oh, blinking out, like, what a guy. And we started bonding over sevens because he was involved with a sevens club called Rambling Jesters. And so I had a sevens team, which I started in 2012 and managed to get it to the Super 7 series for like 4 or 5 years. And we did that. And so we had a chat, and also a classic bit of nepotism. We knew my dad, so I was like, Brill, right, let's see what we can do here. And then that was that. Then a couple of weeks later, I met him for a coffee in there's a Starbucks in Paternoster Square. And that was it. He said, do you want to just come on? And his vision for the club was similar to mine. Like, we wanted to try and make the sevens atmosphere in a 15s club, because we've all been in those 15s clubs where you walk in, it just stinks of, tradition, but like for the wrong reasons. You can't go in this room if you haven't played 50 caps, or if you haven't got your brown shoes on. It's like, well, is that really what rugby is anymore? So yeah, it turned up. He said, do you want to come in? And it was awesome. Like, there was already a bunch of boys there, those 2 good coaches there, and really that was it.
So how many players were there at that time, and what was the what was the feel of the club at that time?
It was a weird one because I've kind of come in with no experience, and I was like, oh, this is brilliant. This is going to be like Football Manager, come in, a couple of transfers, bit of this, bit of that. This is going to be great. Like, what's the budget? Nothing. Great. Awesome. Let's do it. But yeah, it was good. I think because the club hasn't got a natural home and hasn't got a natural bunch of lads coming in who really bought into it, the life cycle of this is going to be 3-4 years. And I think I'd come in when these lads were starting to falter out. From what I understand, like a few seasons before, there was a 2s and a 3s, but the coach at the time had turned the 2s and 3s into bag carriers, so those, which no one wants really. So those went up, I think bulk of them went to like KCS Old Boys or somewhere. So the lads were it felt like their last hurrah. That's kind of a feeling I got, and they were really good blokes, but if there's only one team, you're not really going to train as much or as intense as you can do because, well, you're going to get picked and they've all got jobs. And so, yeah, there's probably just enough to get 18 each week. And at level 5, it's quite grueling. Like, you go in blocks of 5 most of the time. And, no matter what people think about the league itself, it's a really weird one because you have 4 or 5 teams who are all pushing for Nat 2. You've got a bunch of teams who are like just Nat 3 warriors, where they're just hardened blokes who are pretty good at rugby but don't really want to go up, but they're really nasty to play against. And then you've got teams who've just come up who are actually really loving their life. They've now got a National League thing, and it's like the annoying younger sibling, and you're like, oh my God, would you just stop being so intense for 40 minutes? Can you just relax? So yeah, like it was a good atmosphere, but I think the lads were on their way out. Like we had a one period, I think we didn't train for 6 weeks and played 3 games or something ridiculous, which we won one, lost one, and drew one. So actually, it's probably one of the best stints like in that season. But it wasn't. It wasn't sustainable.
No. Okay. So you mentioned about being a bit like Football Manager there, and in the article that you wrote, it said that one of the best things about doing the role was that you really enjoyed the recruitment. So tell me about that. Yeah. What was enjoyable about it for you, and how did you then get the next group of players coming through?
Yeah. So you kind of like you were forced to enjoy it initially because when that season finished, because it finished prematurely because of COVID. We just survived, which was awesome. So you could kind of celebrate. And then a bunch of the lads went off to different clubs, whether it's Barnes or London Welsh or wherever. And then so I was looking through the list, you do more cold calling for this job than you do for like your actual job. And it's like, it's relentless. You've got your spreadsheets up. And I was like, right, okay, cool. We've got 9 people. Lovely. Great. How are we going? Because you need 35 realistically. And out of those 9, I think 1 was a front row. So I was like, right. So my view on the recruitment side is, so with this on the sevens, like we had lads when we went to Super 7 series, we had lads who were playing Surrey 4, Surrey 3, London 2, London 1, playing against teams who had got either really high level sevens players, so I would play like Samurai at their top level. Some of these teams would have had ex-England development lads in. Whereas we were kind of like, I don't know if you ever saw the Renford Rejects when you're growing up, where you had just kind of a misfits of everywhere. But we were winning games. In our first tournament in the series, we got through to a semi-final and of the actual cup. So but the reason I think it worked is because the lads bought in for each other. And in sevens, you can't have lads who aren't going to fight for each other or actually make that cover tackle, because more often than not, they break the line and no one chases back. That's it. It's kind of game over. And so my focus was, 1, let's try and bring a lot of the lads I know in from sevens, because I know what they're like. They're good blokes. And actually, I know they can bring the culture we want to build this team around. And then it's like, okay, well, who's going to be a good bloke? Like, who is that 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10 who will just buy into a long-term project? And so it's trying to rattle through all of those. And equally, you kind of there might be a lot of teams out there who have second teams, like Rams have a really good second team, Henley have a really good second team, who now are moving towards London. It's like, well, actually those teams are no worse off than some of the teams in our league. So why can't they play first team in level 5? And it's just trying to paint the picture of what it could be. Some of these guys are young. It's like, bro, okay, well, why don't you come train once a week, play a good level, because no one wants to keep playing a game when after 2 phases the ball gets dropped, because it just after a while, if you want to play higher, that gets really frustrating. And so it's kind of just a perfect mismatch of all of it, really.
Right. So you started getting players in, the players with the right type of attitude that you were looking for. And looking at the article, you had a fantastic sort of growth over sort of 3 or 4 years in terms of playing numbers. What did you sort of get up to? Where is the club now?
Oh, mate. So, I mean, just to go through the years, like the COVID year was brilliant because we'd train on a Saturday morning. So you train 10 till 12, and then you'd just about be able to get beers in straight away. And some of our best socials were impromptu straight after training, and it'd go from 12 to like 3 or 4. And it was just insane because COVID was just easing up enough for you to do it. But it would be different lads each week because it was so transient. And it was like, look, don't sign up, don't join the club, just come in and throw a ball around. Because over time, we know there's going to be no league games for ages. Just come in and have fun with it. And then if you really like it, you'll stay. And if you'll stay, you'll bring someone else. And if you don't, we haven't lost anything. Because at the end of the day, it's about lads playing the game. Then that season, we played 20. Well, out of the 26 games, we lost 20, forfeited 5, but we won 1. So these lads went through utter turmoil. But that one win was brilliant. I remember it as well. Like we went to Tunbridge Wells away, and I love that because I don't think we lost to Tunbridge Wells in the last 3 games. So I'd love to bring it up. Went to Tunbridge Wells away. Our 2 uni students were late. Our front row was late. Our now club captain turned up looking like a anorexic Jason Statham on his motorbike. Our head coach wasn't there. We had a couple of balls. We're down the far end of a pitch, just looking like a shambles of God knows what. And then in the last play of the game, our captain, God knows how, managed to break 5 tackles, run down the touchline and score. And it was the best thing. And then now, I think we managed to win 9 games, lost the rest, but we got 7 losing bonus points. So we were in quite a lot. And then the team who finished second, I think the aggregate score was 46-43. So we know there's something in this team. Like that league was so competitive but fun. Like every team was pretty good-natured. But I think it shows that team could have broken last year. That the whole club could have folded, because who the hell sits through 25 losses? And some of these guys have played championships. Some of these guys play National League rugby. And quite frankly, they would have had lads looking in going, why would you play there? It's crap. Barnes is there, Wimbledon, Welsh, wherever. But we managed to build a culture which survived the worst possible stuff to then go on and then win 9 games. It was insane. In our first block of 5, we won 3. It was just bonkers. It was ridiculous. It was insane. And now I think, we started the league on minus points and we didn't get relegated. And so with that, you can't ask for anything else, really. And now I think, we just managed to sign an old ex-Nottingham captain in the front row to come in as a player forwards coach. So the club is in a really good place now to push on. But goodness me, it was a heck of a journey.
Yeah, for sure. Now let's we'll go back to the training there as well, because like you said, you don't have a a clubhouse and all that kind of stuff. So where do you train? How does that work?
Yeah, so we in the first few years I was there, we would sometimes train at King's House, which is the original home of a club, and where we play our home games. But it's like training at school. You've got the floodlights on the far side. You can see 10 meters, literally, and you had probably 10 by 50 of this channel. Was this is just dangerous now. When you're not dodging the goose droppings, you're trying to dodge a pole. So we've managed to get an hour a week on a 4G at Chiswick on a third of a pitch or half a pitch, depending. So we share it with HAC, Quinton, and ourselves, and it's just brilliant because we turn up to clubs. I mean, we turned up to Hertford in an away game, and they had more tackle shields than we had squad players. It was ridiculous, and you're looking around what the hell is this about? It was comical. And we're there on a Wednesday night just trying to, come on, lads, we've only got this from 7 to 8. Can we just make sure we're on time? But yeah, no, it's good because the 4G makes a difference too, right? People we're targeting or we were targeting before I moved on was we want lads who are, 21 to 26, just moved to London, who got to focus on their work, but still want to play a competitive game of rugby. So actually a 4G for a bunch of, Clapham residents is actually ideal because more often than not, they're not covered in mud and all sorts. So, the training situation is nuts, and I'm hoping they'll get more than an hour next year. But, it just shows what you can do with the right attitude, the right lads, and you don't have to have everything to be okay.
Yeah. And how many lads are you sort of getting to training now? What's sort of your average turnout?
Mate, so when I first started, it was 6. If we trained at all. COVID, 14. Year before, as in the first league season back, we're up to 18. And now we're at 32, 33 averaging. And so actually you look at that trajectory, it's brilliant. And you look at what we don't have, it's insane. I mean, you look at other clubs which are, big, established money, all sorts, their numbers are nowhere near that. Or they have 2-3 teams and they're at that level. And so it's a really good formula, and I think some clubs need to have a look at themselves a little bit if they're struggling, because there's a lot you can do with less. And so sometimes it's not necessarily that the lads are lazy or don't want to train. Do they need to train twice a week? Do they really need to train twice a week? Honestly, ask yourself, these guys don't want to be spoken to like they're at school anymore. If they've got lives, they've had COVID where they had loads of free time, they might have kids, they might have a dog, or they, quite frankly, might just want to go on a piss on a Thursday. Who trains on a Thursday? What is that? Really? How are you going to get lads out of the city to train? So, yeah.
So just having a sort of an open attitude as to what your offering is as a club. And did you actually sort of ask the players themselves what they wanted as well? Was that something you did?
100%. The players are your lifeblood. If the players live and breathe your culture and your club every single day. And so if you, I don't want to say it, but if you're too arrogant to not listen to the players, then it's only going to go one way. You might be the best thing since sliced bread, and you might have all the coaching badges in the world, which our coaches have none, by the way. But if you don't listen to the lads, then how are you going to develop? It's ridiculous. They they might go, do you know what? We're actually fit enough. We want to play. We want to throw a ball around, or we just want to do an hour a week. Or actually, Chris, next year we want to try and train twice a week. Great, fantastic. We'll change to meet yourselves. Because what's quite nice about having one team is that you can be horrible corporate buzzword, but you can be agile. You can move, you can change. You're not restricted by anything else. I mean, we're restricted by the fact we probably wouldn't be able to put the pitch, but where we have wanted to train twice a week, we've built up good relationships with clubs around us. And, Chiswick have said, yeah, take half a pitch from us tonight. That's fine. Train with us, or we'll go and find clubs and we can train against them. So we did it with HAC a couple of times, Chiswick as well. And it's brilliant because it just makes the weeks go a bit quicker. But it also keeps the players happy. Stash is another thing, right? Some of these lads really wanted stash this year. It's okay, cool, we'll do it. We'll go find it. We didn't think it was necessarily important, or rather we did, but not at the top of our priority list. But it was really important to the guys. It's okay, cool, let's go and try and do some fundraising. We managed to do it for 30 of the lads, and it went down really well. So I think you have to listen to the lads on the floor within reason.
Fantastic. Always within reason. Now, something you mentioned there about doing the co-training sessions with other clubs. This ties into something you wrote in your blog post as well, which is a lot of clubs are sort of on the brink of just not getting enough numbers and all that kind of stuff. So obviously this ties in with that. What was your experience with working with other clubs? How did that go down?
Yeah, there's a lot of clubs who will isolate themselves because they think they are the best thing since sliced bread. We are this town, people respect us. It's great, you may have been really good 60 years ago, champ, but you're not now. And things have changed. For us, there's a lot of clubs in the Southwest London area within spitting distance. And therefore, there are physically not enough players to sustain all of the ambitions of every single club. For us, we grew our numbers that we managed to get second team fixtures this year. And in order to get these lads games, we had to go and build bridges with other clubs. So when we went to Chiswick, we went to HAC, we went to London Scottish, the amateur side, and we managed to get the lads games. Now, I actually think if you can go cap in hand or even just have honest conversations, you will find good people. Sometimes there's a fear of rejection or a fear of saving face, but you have to show your vulnerabilities. I remember having a big debate with some coaches in previous years at the club, because my view is that we get the train to as many places as we can. Therefore, it is an absolute ball ache to carry the 3 pads we have, the 3 balls we have, but also the training, the kits. No lad is going to go from Clapham out to Barnesbridge, back to Clapham to go to, they're just not going to do it. And to ask them, you just know you're going to get that child to parent roll of the eyes, shrug of the shoulders. It's just not going to happen. So I would contact clubs ahead of time and say, look, everyone knows who we are. We try really hard on the relations side. Can we borrow some cones? Can we borrow a couple of pads? Can we borrow a ball? And clubs are really happy to do it. But for whatever reason, people see it's an embarrassing thing to do. But it's not at all. Like, it's a community game. They do it for anyone else. So why wouldn't they do it for the other team? You know, sometimes you might go and the balls are deflated, or they are literally the soap balls. But who cares? Like, it builds that like type of shithousery is the best thing about amateur rugby. You know, like we would, like sometimes we'd go and find out which team they would like the home team would warm up in. We would go and find out which end the home team would warm up in, and we'd be like, sod it, we're going to move all our stuff up there and put it all down before we move in, before we go and get changed. Or like, you know, if they put their stuff out, we'll move it slightly, you know, or Sig Cup came, we hit a tackle shield for a little bit, you know, just type of, because it's like, we haven't got a lot. So you have to kind of, you have to do certain things just to get in the heads a little bit. And, you know, it's childish, but, you know, we've got to have something.
Chris, I'm glad to hear that kind of stuff still goes on.
It's got to go on, mate. Otherwise, like, it's too professional. It's like people are too scared to sneeze. But like on the working relationship side, like Chiswick have been great. Like we managed to, they have the 2s and 3s, and now it's kind of falling into the 2s or 3s, depending which league they want to put themselves in. And we've managed to, we can hold our heads up high and go, we've answered the call and we've backfilled their, so then these lads who pay their subs at Chiswick get game time. Otherwise, what will happen is they will slowly stop paying their subs because they will not be getting games. So why would you pay for something you're not getting? Even if they say you get physio, it's like, well, I'd rather just go privately. And so now these lads are games, our lads have got games, and we've got a good relationship between the clubs. So hopefully what will happen this year, when we have 14, 15, we can say, hey, just 4, 5, 6 of your guys want to come and backfill this team. And so it'll be swings and roundabouts. But if you don't make these bridges, lads are going to miss out. Like, and no one wants that really. The game's in a funny place. Like, it's such a fun game, especially at that level. So lads should be encouraged to play.
Yeah, 100%. That's one of the key tenets of why I do this podcast. Is I just want rugby to be available for anybody that wants to play it, wherever they are at whatever time. So that kind of thing, that kind of activity really, really helps with this.
Yeah.
Now, next thing is, so you've sort of chosen the people, the kind of people that you want in the club. You've sort of given them freedom to sort of say what they want. Are there any other tactics in terms of culture that you've used to breed what you've got there?
I think you have to, it's all well and good like listening to the lads and getting the right lads in, but you've got to stay on top of it. But at the same time, you have to have lads in the squads. I call them like your culture architects, or your squad architects. You've got to have like a little, I don't know, knights of the round table, as it were, who are going to kind of keep their ear to the ground, understand what rumours are swelling, or thingy's been approached to go here, or actually the lads are a little bit pissed off because, you know, we haven't got anything to warm up in, or we've only got 6 out of the 9 water bottles in the holder, which is fair enough. We haven't got tape. And sometimes you don't hear about this stuff because as much as you want to be on the friend side, like after a while, there's a little invisible line which gets drawn up. And obviously you want lads to tell you how they really feel, but you don't get everything. So you need to have a bunch of lads you can trust. You can play that whole double agent card. Obviously you've got to caution it with, because some guys will feel awkward about it. But I think that's important, really important actually. And then I would say you need to understand what's around you. So for us, because we're surrounded by like 1,000,001 clubs, it's hard because there's obviously lots of poaching opportunities. But you should worry about it. But if you build a strong enough culture, you should hear about it and be able to head it off. But because there's so many other clubs, you'll be able to see and hear what they do really well. And you shouldn't be arrogant enough in your own ability. Like you should be able to go have these conversations, talk to these coaches, like talk to their players, find out what they're doing really well, why they like it, why would you move there? That's really cool. Like, and then try and incorporate it into your own club. Like it's a constant cycle of learning. And this is what I say, like the coaching isn't necessarily the be all and end all. I think it's one part of like a massive, massive piece. But yeah, you've got to understand what the other clubs are doing, because at the end of the day, how can how can you defend yourself against something you don't know about?
Yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
I think.
Yeah, so the next sort of point, and you kind of alluded to it there, is this idea of club alignment, like everybody's basically pointing in the same direction. So who else is involved in your club, and is everybody pointed in the same direction now?
I hope so. I really hope so. Who else is involved? You think after 100, we had our 160th year this year, so you'd think there'd be a whole line of succession. However, currently we got a board, which is great. Like, they are honestly some of the best blokes, and they've been around since 70s, 80s, 90s, so been around for a long time. But then there is a massive gap with no one there, with just a guy who used to captain the club, Tony. He's just come back into the fold, and he's been really good at bringing like coaching consultants in to help with our head coach. He's been really good with ourselves, and we try to get players in Cornwall to play a cup game. He's been really good, but there's no support in that middle chain, or there is, but not in a traditional sense. So yes, we need alignment, and we have got it from the board now, which is good, and we've got it from the players. So yes, I say we're all in the same direction, but it's a shame it hasn't been more challenging. Like, it would have been nice to deal with the lads who are between 40 and 60 who played here 15, 20 years ago, sticking their oar in once in a while. Because, if people don't stick their oar in, you're never going to change your opinion, or you're never going to look at a problem in a different way. And so I think we've probably lost a bit of growth by not being challenged enough, which is a weird thing to say, but you want that, right? Like, you're not to the point where it's Game of Thrones and there's lots of different factions, but you still want to be able to be challenged, or someone to go, actually, Chris, do you know what? Have you thought about X, Y, and Z? You may think we've always done it this way, but here's the reason why. So I think the club is missing that element, but hopefully we're building that culture, and if that continues to grow, we've planted the seeds for the lads we've got now to become those lads in the future of the club. So it's a shame for us, but for future generations of players, they should now have that. Like, even though I'm moving on, I still want to be involved, because it's a nomadic club, but it's important to me. Like, we've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into it. Quite literally every Friday. Shit, we haven't got a prop. Crap, what time's the expedite loan finish? Shit, has anyone got a DocuSign? Has anyone got Wi-Fi? I mean, you joke, but like, the amount of I had a hairline which was complete, kind of, but it's definitely come back a bit.
So you mentioned there you're moving on,
yeah.
But you want to stay involved. How do you see your involvement moving forward? Like, how do you see that happening?
For me personally, like, I think a recruitment angle will be a little bit of a conflict of interest depending where I end up. So that'll be a no-go, which is a shame. But I think where some new guys are going to be stepping up, I will be wanting to do the challenging opinion and being like, okay, well, that's great. You want to go full steam ahead, you're a million miles an hour, but what about this? Just that kind of devil's advocacy role to be like, stop, check. And more often than not, they would have, but you've still got to do it just in case they haven't. So that for me, and also just advocacy of the club, like the amount of abuse. So I would read text messages. So we got it to the stage where when lads got approached, I'd receive screenshots from different coaches in the league saying, we will give you X. And then sometimes you'd see ones of, oh, CS Stags, it's on the downfall. It's a bit of a joke of a club. And you're like, hang on a sec. So for me, it's more of an advocacy role. Like, it's like the fact that you've got lads there or coaches who, probably got a couple of kids themselves, and they're berating and slating other clubs. You're like, get a grip of yourself. Like, outside of your rugby club, no one knows who you are. So just rein it in a little bit, because if someone is that forthright, what are they going to be forthright about you with to someone else? So that type of stuff I want to try and get rid of, because there's a good bunch of guys there. They're really skillful. The board they really want the club to do well. You know, you got one of them who's having like a liver transplant, and he's still rocking up for the games. Like it's awesome. It's probably one of the better communities I've seen inside a rugby club. It's insane considering there is no club. Like,
yeah. So firstly, that's really sad that those kind of text messages and things are being sent. That's not really a very good look for the sport at all. But secondly, the question is, why are you moving on, and what are your plans?
I mean, so I've done it for 4 years. As I said, I had a perfect hairline and much younger looking, and now I'm not, which is a shame. But I really like projects. So when I had my sevens team, we started from quite literally the most social of social cups at Bournemouth to organically and without paying going through to the Super 7 series with a similar crop of players and competing consistently, so not just doing the odd tournament. With Stags, we went from probably almost relegation and arguably could have been relegated should the season have continued, to the club almost folding in COVID, losing 25 games, and now on the up. Like, I really like rebuilding projects. And now, like, I'm not a spotlighty type of person. So I know they're going to do well this season. Like, they have everything they can to push on. They have a really good squad, and the signings which have been made recently put them in a really good stead. But I think it's naturally it's a time for me to go. Like, you look around in different clubs, and there's some clubs who have the same DORs for a long period of time. So my challenge to them is where's your enthusiasm coming from? Where's your passion coming from? And then where's the new ideas coming from? Because you have to challenge or change your environment to get that. And for me, I think I could feel it a little bit this year where I was not running out of steam, but like, well, I know it'll be the same league next year. Yes, there'll be some better derbies, you know, Hammersmith or Welsh, and it'll be really good for those days. But I think I've done all I can, and the foundations are now fully set. And now it's probably a time to go to another club where they're higher and kind of ignore the title and just kind of go in and be part of the team and help, or maybe same level or league below and try and get another team going. Because there's lots of teams on the edge, and it's not right, really, because when you dive into a rugby club, some of the stories you hear from people are fantastic. Some of the ambitions of the players, like some lads want to play National 2, National 1, and that's their pinnacle. And you think, bloody right, like, how can we help you get there? Like, it's awesome. But I think for me, Stags has run its course, which is a shame. But as I said, they're in such a good place that I don't feel bad. Like, I could have left last season, but it would have been so wrong. Like, it just, like, you have so much passion, you'd have been doing the job even if you'd left. So it's like, well, let's stay, let's build it. These players deserve to go and have something fun to play for, and they have. So, but for me next, I don't know. Like, I've spoken to a few clubs and had a few offers, which is really nice, but I don't think they're the right ones. And so to do this job, in my belief, you have to be fueled of passion, because there'll be a lot of nights there where you're up till 11, 12 o'clock, like scanning through Facebook friend lists of like, oh, actually, I know this person. There'll be a lot of like phoning around for front rows. There'll be a lot of everything. And you can't do that if you're not passionate about it. And the clubs I've spoken to, unfortunately, it's just not. It got carried away with the flattery. But then on second looking, it was like, it's not for me, which is a shame.
So what kind of things are you
back
looking
to the drawing?
For?
So I think the attitude of players. So Stags, we're really lucky because we managed to build it ourselves. I really hate going into club. Like, I hate old school clubs where you go in and there's a collective of like, we're the best thing in the world. You're like, wow, great, okay, awesome that you think that. I love the confidence, but again, outside of this club, you're not. So let's stop getting your ego in the way of things. Like, I really can't stand it. You know, when everyone walks around like a Billy Big Time, it's like, unless it's like, I'd say National 2, National 1, what's it, where these guys are phenomenally talented lads to play consistently at that level, then you've got to rein it in. Like, why are you playing rugby in the first place? And I think that why is probably where I would want to go, like where there is that alignment, where the lads all bought in and they're on that journey. The flip side is that's really hard to get into if you want a rebuilding project, because it sounds like we're already rebuilding. So I don't know is the honest answer, and that's it's really tricky, because there's only so many clubs, isn't there, really? So
yeah, I mean, what about the possibility of not doing it next year? What about the possibility of like having some time off? Is that something you've considered?
Well, I think my puppy will be very happy. I think she'll be great. But no, like, it gets into your system, doesn't it, rugby? Like, every Saturday, probably from the age of 6, you've been, for me, I was at Cobham for most of it, then over to Chobham, and like, it's part of your life. Like, you miss it. Like, when it comes to June, you're like, when's that touch starting up again? Like, when are we getting back into that? Because you miss your mates. And my worry is the club has been really supportive with myself mental health wise, and I think that it could be quite an isolating experience if you stop going to a rugby club, because these guys are your mates. Like, you have everyone's back and they have yours. And so if you stop going, you can very easily slip into a routine, which, is it fun? Like, is this what you want to do? And I did toy with it. Don't get me wrong. Like, some Saturdays when you get the break week, you're like, oh, how much better is this? Like, not getting up and, lugging some kit back to King's House for some bloke to go and wash it. Like, how much better? But I think I need it personally. Like, I enjoy it too much. Like, I was walking up to the village green yesterday and went to watch, not purposefully, but I went, had a coffee and just got really sucked into watching the under-10s cricket. And I was like, this is excellent. Like, this is what your weekends are for. And I was like, crap, I don't have a kid. so like, do you know what I mean though? Like, it's sport is like, you get really sucked into it. I know on a Saturday evening when you're flicking through the RFU website, like, oh, they lost again, brill. Oh, fantastic. Oh, that's a shame. Like, that person got a bonus point. Oh, bugger. Like, I don't know what I'd be doing on my Saturday evenings, which is a bit sad, but yeah, I don't know. It's
great to hear. It's great to hear such a sort of passion for the game, and it was just a thought I had, but no, it sounds like you're very much going to be in it again at some point very soon. I'm sure.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay. Let's move on to the stash section of the show.
Oh, right.
Chris, what's your favourite bit of stash that you've ever received?
Oh, that's a good question, mate. For me, I'm always a fan of the big baggy hoodies, where if you wash it too hard, that's it. It's faded and it's shrunk on the arms. So when you lift your arms up, your hands come down here and it's up your waist. But for those first few times you don't wash it, it's so comfy and you can just bum around. But I'm starting to transition towards, like the nice quarter zips, because you can wear them when you go golfing, or wherever. You can just wear them wherever. It kind of looks apart. I wish I could wear the gilets, but I've got this weird like boulder back where like, you end up looking like a Michelin man. So it doesn't quite work. But I like the idea of a gilet. But yeah, I think it must be a quarter zip. I think
quarter zip. Okay, cool. And what's your favourite kit of all time? So this can be any team from any era.
Do you know what? The Munster kits. When I would say, when did they win the Heineken Cup? Like 2006 against Biarritz, I think.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Those old school Munster kits were just brilliant, and the fact that they haven't changed too much, you can it's like looking at like a really nice Porsche, where you can still see the Porsche from ages ago to now, like has the same shape. It's the same with those Munster kits. I think they are just top notch. Like, they are fantastic. And also,
that's a great analogy.
That's actually quite weird. Yeah, got a stag, haven't they? So yeah, it's kind of a bit of a weird one. So stag, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. Well, maybe I have to go find a team with stags on it, because it seems to be fantastic. Yeah,
it'll be part of your life. Okay. What about awful kits? Are there any terrible kits out there that you really hate?
Oh, Do you know what? I actually wasn't a fan of our kit. Like, I found it so, oh God, I hated it so much. Like, you kind of like the idea of it when it comes out, like, oh, that's not great, is it? Like, it's a bit budget. I've seen some howlers in the 7 circuits, but like, I don't know. But do you know what? That Stade Francais kit, when they had all the pictures of like people, there's like one kit where it's just faces. I hated it. Like, I was like, what is this? Like, only because I'm the most vanilla white person you've ever seen. Like, if I'm not wearing this jumper, it'll be a shuffle. Like, I can't pull off anything else. And even that I will struggle to pull off. So maybe because it's a bit too edgy for myself, I don't know. But yeah, that kit, I hated it. I don't care what everyone else says, they're wrong.
Yeah. Fair enough. Now then, okay, so we're going to bring this to a close now, Chris, but is there just sort of anything else you want to say just to round out the conversation, sort of any advice for people in rugby clubs up and down the land?
I think it's probably just don't be afraid to chat. So whether that's to other clubs, whether that's to your players, and to be honest, whether it's to the board to say, no, we're going to change because of X, Y, and Z. I think that's the biggest thing. Like, don't just grumble. Don't just sit there and I don't know if you ever coached before, but you know when you see like the kids at the back and they're just having a micro conversations because they don't agree with something. If you chat, you head off these types of things. And then it could even be for mental health. Like you ask questions of lads and you uncover that they're not feeling great. So it's a really, really simple message, but you know, there's no harm in talking, is there? Except on the tube. Like, ignore the tube, but like everywhere, like everything else to rugby, just what have you got to lose? Oh no, sorry, we don't engage with other rugby clubs. Good for you. That's the worst that's going to happen, isn't it? So.
Yeah, absolutely. That's fantastic advice. And Chris, if people want to get a hold of you to talk about anything that we've spoken about today, I don't know, maybe you offer you a role at their club. What's the best way for people to get a hold of you?
To be honest, probably just on my Instagram there, just coming up at the bottom of the screen. I don't really use anything else. And if you want to chat about rugby, that's great. If you want to see pictures of my dog, that's also pretty good. That's probably the easiest way, to be honest.
Okay, so that's at chris.swann, Swann with 2 N's, .10 on Instagram. And if they want to find out about CS Stags, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, and do you know what? To be fair, like the guys, I think Paz and Trig, who do the Instagram, if we've won, they're pretty good at ripping into the other team afterwards with some perfectly selected memes or GIFs. Especially the Tunbridge one was good when we beat them 3 times. No, Hertford when we beat them 3 times this season, and when we beat Tunbridge Wells twice this season, there's some crackers which came out. So if we've lost, just ignore it because it'll be quiet for 2 weeks. But yeah, if we've won, it's normally pretty good to watch.
Well, that's just subscribe from me for sure. So at CS_Stags, that is. Everyone listening at home, I will link everything up that we've spoken about today in the show notes, which you can find at amateurrugbypodcast.com. So it just leaves me to say, Chris, thank you so much for your time today. That was a really sort of fascinating chat about the intricacies of that murky world of level 5 rugby, sort of in between the elite and the social game. So thank you very much.
Cheers, Tim. Thanks. It's been awesome.
Good man. Okay, there he goes. I hope you get back in this game again soon, Chris. It sounds like you've got an incredible passion for it and some just really sort of bright ideas as well. So great stuff on that. Now, we're coming up to the Great Rugger Run again this year, so I'm deep in training. It's 1,000 kilometres I'm running this year from the west of Wales all the way to the West Country, trying to visit over 170 rugby clubs, all in support of the My Name's Doddy Foundation, the 4Ed cause, and the Freddie Crisp Trust. So it's 1,000,000 meters for MND. You can find out everything about that at thegreatruggerrun.org. The podcast is active on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, where we're doing a lot of interesting videos over the coming weeks. So go and hit subscribe over there if you can. And if you've enjoyed this podcast, you can rate, and review on your podcast player, like, share, retweet, or even join the community at patreon.com/amateur rugby podcast. But what I'd really like is if you mention it to someone in person the next time you're down your local rugby club. So until then, get out and play.